Assalamu alaikum. It's a great pleasure to be here. I spend a great deal of time in my job and as I survey leadership in my country and around the world with old people. Some old people are wonderful. It's an important part of the engagement we do. But it's inspiring and also just a good time for me to be able to spend some time with vibrant young people here in Bangladesh. And I know that you all, each of you in this room, have had that same experience of looking at your leadership, looking out across your communities, and seeing a whole lot of old people in positions of power. And I'm here to say that I have also seen another Bangladesh. I have seen a young and vibrant and creative Bangladesh. I've seen it in the last few days that I've spent in this country, and I've seen it in this room right now, right here, with each of you. I don't think there is a single country in the world that I have visited that has a greater spirit of volunteerism and service than Bangladesh. And I have seen that service in action, talking to young leaders in communities around Dhaka, talking with young leaders who have joined with the United States Embassy here to create projects and programs that bring services to young people and help young people find a voice. I spent some time yesterday with the Jago Foundation's Volunteer for Bangladesh program, maybe some of you know it. And that program has brought together 10,000 young volunteers from across Bangladesh to create hundreds of projects that bring services to almost 500,000 people. I've seen it in groups of young leaders like the Bangladesh Youth Leadership Center, like the Community Action Foundation, which was founded by a young woman leader herself, not unlike the young woman I see before me right now. So I've been very inspired by the stories of young Bangladeshis that I've met, and those stories have given me great optimism, both for the future of this country and for the future of all of our shared problems around the world. Because solutions to our current times of challenge will be in the hands of young people like you and me. Around the world, we are seeing 60% of the population under the age of 30. We're seeing young people as a tremendous positive change force. We're seeing young people transform their political realities on the ground, revolutionize our technologies and our ways of communicating and connecting with one another. But we're also seeing young people as potentially destabilizing force, something dangerous and chaotic. That tremendous energy and vibrancy when you cannot find jobs, cannot make their voices heard peacefully in their communities, can fuel conflicts. None of these realities have been lost on both our allies around the world, like Bangladesh, democracies that strive to create space for young people to make their voices heard, and to attract the best and brightest young thinkers to their job markets and universities. But it also hasn't been lost on our adversaries, on agents of violence and extremism that have constructed sophisticated youth recruitment campaigns around the world to capitalize on young people's feelings of voicelessness, to give them a purpose. So it's in all of our hands to ensure that the tremendous force of youth around the world is used for good. And seeing the spirit of service here in Bangladesh has given me great hope in that respect. The United States also saw this global landscape, and it's been a privilege for me to be a part of our response over the last year. We constructed a task force at the United States Department of State to look at how we could change the game on talking to, and more importantly, listening to young people. And the results of that task force is a new policy focused on responding directly to young people's feelings of voicelessness and young people's lack of access to opportunities. there are two key pledges that we've made. Everywhere where the United States is present around the world, we've committed to focusing on building opportunities for young people to engage in markets, to find jobs, to start their own businesses and initiatives. And I know we have some young entrepreneurs in the room today. Those are exactly the young people that we are trying to stand by. Second, we've committed to focusing on fostering young voices on the ground everywhere in the world, young leaders in their communities. In Bangladesh's pivotal 2008 election, as you all know, close to 25% of the vote comprised of first-time voters, young voters, and that number is expected to increase in 2014. So you all have a pivotal role to play in making your voices heard and steering the future of your country. And the United States, for its small part, wants to stand by you as you make your voices heard. I mentioned some of the programs and collaborations that I've seen on this trip. I was also excited to launch our new Council of Youth Advisors to the United States Embassy here in Dhaka, a body of vibrant young leaders, men and women, not unlike yourselves, that will have a direct role in making their voices heard in our policies and programs, and in telling us what the challenges are, what we can be doing more of, better, what we're doing wrong. And that's a conversation I hope to have with all of you today as well. For my part, it's been a privilege on a personal level to be involved in this initiative, partly because the challenges are ones that I have felt so acutely from an early age myself. I grew up in a family of 14. I know families are big here in Bangladesh. Mine was particularly big in the United States. 10 of my siblings were adopted, and adopted from every corner of the earth, with special needs, with disabilities, often from corners of their societies that usually aren't heard, that are disenfranchised or oppressed or discriminated against. So I saw firsthand at an early age the power of young men and women brought together and given voice where they might otherwise not have any. I have a brother adopted from South Asia, from India, who is paraplegic from polio, who had never been spoken to in any language for the first 10 years of his life. He was abandoned at an orphanage and had no space to make himself heard. And it was inspiring seeing him grow from being someone who was afraid to speak to being someone who was the most forceful and creative problem solver at my family dinner table growing up. That's an example that I see mirrored in the powerful young men and women that are leading in communities across Bangladesh. And I call specific attention to the role of young women. I had the privilege of spending some time with some madrasa students yesterday in one of our English access programs. And although the young women sometimes took more time to speak up, when they did, they were the most powerful voices in that room. And I look across this room and I see the same strength, and I hope that you will carry that forward as you all step into leadership roles. One of my new friends here today, Sadia, who painted my extraordinary painting there, by the way, best birthday present I have ever gotten. Said, "We are not girls, we are tigers." And I love that spirit. We want to stand by you as you remain tigers, as you remain strong and forceful leaders in all of your communities. The challenges that face Bangladesh's young people are great. I know that there is often limited space to make all of your voices heard. I myself, in the United States, have also had challenges in making my voice heard. It requires tenacity, it requires persistence. America is not perfect, and I am not perfect. And it's a process every day of trying to get to a place where we give people of every age equal opportunity to make their voices heard. But it is in your hands that your voices ultimately are heard. It's up to you, and I have great belief that if you continue to be organized and persistent and peaceful participants, and if you refuse to fall silent, you will ultimately steer the fate of this country. I would say to you also that you have extraordinary opportunities that many, both in Bangladesh and around the world, do not. You are at one of the most storied institutions in Bangladesh, one of the most prestigious and elite schools. You have been given extraordinary tools. So I would urge you to pay that forward, as I know many of you already are in community service projects that you've been involved with as students. Don't lose that commitment. I was asked by a young person while I was here what my 3 pieces of advice would be for other young people trying to assume peaceful leadership roles. And I would say 3 things. First, to stay principled. I've had incredible conversations while here with young people who have affirmed their commitments to openness and transparency in government, to equal access to opportunities for young and old, rich and poor, young women and young men. And I would call on all of you to not lose that commitment. Very often when young people step into leadership roles and join existing establishments, they lose sight of the original commitments that drove them. And I know from my conversations with you so far that that won't happen. I would also say to believe in yourselves and your own voices. Remember that you're not girls, you're tigers. That girls are tigers. I mentioned that I grew up in a large family. 7 of my siblings were sisters, so I spent a long time being bossed around by girls. I wouldn't want to take any of you in a fight. And I have the privilege right now of working for an institution where all of my bosses are women. It's been a great honor to work for one of the most committed and one of the most principled women, I think, leading in the world right now, in the form of Secretary Clinton. And our commitment to young people around the world and to young Bangladeshis comes directly from her and from her long career of service for young women and young people everywhere. I would also say, finally, to be a united front. Too often, young people with shared principles and aspirations are divided by infighting, by petty competition. I know that there are a large number of competing platforms for community service and volunteerism here in Bangladesh and in Dhaka. And I would hope that all of you, as you pursue leadership roles, can join together and work jointly towards your shared causes. As I said, I leave this country with great optimism. And I hope that before I leave this school today, I get to hear from you what your challenges are, what your aspirations are, and what more the United States can be doing to stand by you as you pursue those. We're listening, and I look forward to continuing that conversation. Thank you so much.